I've never understood the urge to pull out a camera and film a gig. These videos were taken at Arcade Fire's gig in Dublin last year, and I can tell you for a fact, they don't capture anything near what it felt like to actually be there. I was there when that confetti bomb went off, and I really can't explain how great a moment it was. You'll have to take my word for it. But what did the people who took these videos experience? Surely the enjoyment of a gig is to participate in the moment, to have a reaction to what's happening around you. When you pull out a camera phone at a gig, you're ruining that experience in advance. You don't even get a chance to have that moment, let alone ruin it.
People, it's just all photographers. Do you think you could, like, just fuck off? We're trying to play to the people, it's not about this.
I know, they won't get it, Glenn. I've tried saying it politely, they just don't want to know.
In his book, How Music Works, David Byrne talks about the difference between studio recordings and live recordings. He writes about how you can have a strong emotional reaction to live music when you watch it in the moment, but if you see a recording of the same gig, it might ruin that feeling, or at least it won't be as perfect or transcendent as it felt in the moment.
They're applauding for that moment, that they're experiencing that moment.
If you're going to consume the gig through a 4-inch screen, you may as well stay home and watch Stop Making Sense. At least that was choreographed for cameras. If you've ever been to a museum with famous artworks in it, you'll have seen how silly the camera thing can get. People flock by the thousands to places like the Louvre to take photos of artworks that have been reproduced millions of times in print and online. These people don't seem to get how pointless it is to consume every artwork they come across by snapping their pocket cameras at them. It doesn't seem to enter their minds that they might have taken the time to actually look at and appreciate them. David Sedaris said these kinds of photos are not saying, look what Bruegel did, painted this masterpiece, but look what I did, went to Rotterdam and stood in front of this Bruegel painting. And it's true, we treat these photographs as achievements. They're lies we tell about ourselves through images, and the result is that we're constantly sharing uninspired imagery. But it's not a one-way street, we get to experience the lie everyone else is telling about themselves as well. Put that together with TV shows, ads, music videos, comic books, news broadcasts, billboards, paintings, video games, vines, YouTube and Periscope videos, Instagram and Snapchat photos, and it feels like we're being overexposed to visual media and ultimately becoming desensitized to images. And when that happens, we lose our visual literacy, our ability to be stimulated physically or intellectually by images. This is a problem for filmmakers who try to make emotional connections with audiences through images. It puts me in mind of something Werner Herzog said. We live in a society that has no adequate images anymore, and if we do not find adequate images and an adequate language for our civilization with which to express them, we will die out like the dinosaurs.
There should be real war against commercials, real war against talk shows, real war against Bonanza and Rawhide, or all these things.
But what are adequate images? How do we know them if we see them, and what value do they really add to society or life in general? We can all summon images from films that we would consider adequate, shots that are beautifully composed or cut together well, and that say something meaningful that can't be expressed in words. The history of cinema is filled with them. But for an image to be adequate, it can't just be beautiful. One of the most underhanded compliments you can pay a film is to say that it's beautifully shot. When you praise a film you really enjoy, you usually comment on how entertaining or thought-provoking it is. To say something is beautifully or well shot means the images look nice but have no inherent meaning. And I think that touches us on a deeper level. They're one step up from the camera phone videos at gigs. Then there are images that are used as a secondary device to emphasize words. For example, John Oliver may be creating some of the best content on television, but this is not the kind of imagery we're after here. Oliver makes use of the visual element for gags.
Abstinence is a healthy choice that many teens will make, either by choice or, as I can attest, by circumstance. But
the graphic design on the show might look perfectly fine, but it's something we've seen since the dawn of television. It's so visually unstimulating that it's hard to feel anything in particular towards it. On top of all this, you've got internet images of extreme violence and hardcore pornography, two things which are supposed to be extremely stimulating. But how can they stimulate us when we see things like this every day? We're getting bored on the one hand through lack of visual imagination and dulled on the other by overstimulation. We spend so much time consuming images that we don't have time to stop and look at just one, to appreciate it. We can't tell whether a painting is well made or not, or sometimes even when a film is good. The reason might be because the standards are shifting. For centuries, the purpose of most art created in Europe was to form a communion with God. Now we are far more interested in humans than myths about eternal beings, and so we prefer unadorned snapshots of everyday life. Imagery is far more democratic than it was in Da Vinci's time, but when a guy pointing a camera at his own face and telling you the events of his day becomes the standard, it doesn't really feel like we're using images to their full potential. Through it all, adequate images continue to be created by filmmakers, but you have to really dig to find them. Probably the most visually exciting film I saw this year was Anna Lily Amirpour's A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. Shot in a peculiar black and white, the film feels like the love child of a film noir, a horror movie and a western, but it also feels original and significant. It's a film constructed from an unusual perspective, that of an Iranian American, and when you're watching it you really do feel that culture clash at work. It looks like a comic book, and an Iranian docudrama, and a horror movie, and a music video, but it's not really any of those things, it's just what it is. I'd like to use this film to explain what adequate images actually look like, but it's not really possible. There is no real formula to this. You may want to use established styles or rip off the kinds of images that have inspired you, but there's no guarantee you'll succeed. You can be inspired by others, but that only works if you add something that wasn't there before, if you use your images to change how we feel about the images you're inspired by. So what does this have to do with using camera phones at gigs? Well, the reason I wanted to mention A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night here was to say that I think it's an important film. I want you to watch it if you haven't seen it. I want to share it with you. And to my mind, that's the same desire that makes you want to whip out your phone at a gig and try to capture the moment. You want to share it with someone. The problem is that at a gig, you aren't creating that moment. You're just witnessing it. A musician's job is to create moments, but they can't be captured in a live setting. They can just be experienced. A film director's job, on the other hand, is to both create and capture moments. Cameras have become so convenient now that we all want to use them to capture the moments of our lives, and some of us might get lucky and capture something truly spectacular, but those are the exceptions. It's great that we have so many different perspectives now, but when it comes to images, we should be able to identify the people who really know how to use them. The ones who are inspired by images. The ones who communicate something that can't be expressed in words. If you think you're one of those people, then more power to you. If not, well, my advice would be to put the camera phone away and just sit back and watch the show. I guarantee you'll enjoy it a lot better that way.
Who decides which route we take? As people drift into a dream